Hey there, I'm Rachel Ehring, and you're listening to the Top Music Piano Podcast. Get inspired as we discuss creative resources, trends in piano pedagogy, ways to grow your income and streamline your studio, and new ways to engage your students each week. If you are a teacher who wants to go beyond the method books to create an innovative studio that fosters lifelong music makers, you've come to the right place. Hello, piano teachers. Welcome to the show today. If you listened to last week's episode, you know that we are talking about music collaboration this month at Top Music. When I heard about that topic, I knew that I wanted to talk to today's guest because I had seen her posting on Instagram this summer about her Duet camps, and I thought it was such a clever way to incorporate collaboration into a piano studio. If you have ever felt overwhelmed by the logistics of including more collaboration in your studio, I hope you'll keep listening because Kirsten tells us her exact process and how she made it work this summer. Kirstin Weston is the founder and owner of KW Music Studios and offers private lessons in piano performance, music theory, and piano pedagogy in Aliso Viejo, California, and online. She manages a team of instructors who offer private lessons for the studio in their home studios or in the students' homes throughout Orange County. Kirsten received a BA in piano performance from UCLA in 2012 and an MFA in piano performance from UCI in 2014. She has performed in competitions, masterclasses, chamber music groups, duet teams, and has been an active member of professional teaching organizations, including MTNA, MTAC, and CAPMT. Outside of piano teaching, Kirsten loves spending time with her husband, 2 kids, and their dog, Oreo. And by the way, I've seen Oreo on Instagram, and he's a cutie patootie. So here is my talk with Kirsten. Hi, Kirsten. Welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here today. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little about your teaching studio?
Hi, Rachel. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Kirstin Weston, and I'm the founder and owner of KW Music Studios, a piano teaching business in Orange County.
Great. So tell us a little more, because it's not just you, right? You have teachers working for you. And I know a lot of our listeners, that's kind of their dream, is to possibly hire other teachers and have, expand a little. So tell us a little more about your setup in Orange County.
So right now we have 140 students in the studio total, and I have 11 employees, 10 of whom are teachers, and one of whom is purely administrative. One of our teachers is also the studio manager. So she helps me kind of at the helm, like run the whole thing. And she also teaches. So it's been great to have her on board these past couple years, a year and a half. Just as the studio's grown, just to have her help and not be the only person doing all the admin work or running everything. So that's our team at the studio.
That's amazing. 140 students. And is it all piano or do you do other instruments?
We're mostly piano, but we do have a voice instructor who also teaches piano and a little bit of guitar. So we have a couple of voice students who also take piano. And then we have a guitar and piano combo student as well. So it is mainly piano, but we've had some teachers that also offer different instruments or things. But yeah, mainly piano.
Okay. And do you have a physical location where they come, or are you going to students' homes? So
I run the studio from my home in Aliso Viejo, and I teach exclusively from there. And then the teachers who work for me either teach in their homes if they have a home setup that's similar to mine with grand piano in the living room and seating area for the parents. Or they go to the students' homes, or they do a little bit of both, just depending on what they want, what they kind of have in their home and their schedules and everything.
Okay. That's really inspiring because I think so many teachers get overwhelmed with the idea of a commercial space. Have you ever considered a commercial space?
I have considered it. There was an opportunity to purchase one in Aliso Viejo when I was pregnant with my daughter 5 years ago. But it just felt too overwhelming to start that. And I was grateful in the end that I decided not to have a commercial location because COVID hit soon after. So it would have been very expensive and not used. So it's something I've considered, but I also just love the flexibility of it, being able to work from home and be a stay-at-home mom and offer that opportunity to other teachers if they're also moms. And just that flexibility. I think, especially post COVID, I feel like people want flexibility in the workplace and having that opportunity and just to be different. Because I think there are a lot of other really successful multi-teacher studios that have that commercial space. So just to allow my business to be a little bit different at this time, I feel really happy with it. Who knows if like things will change, as I keep going with this. But as of now, I'm really happy with the setup.
Yes. And I'm also in Orange County. So listeners know we live not that far from each other, but we've never actually met in person yet. We're going to hopefully soon. But out here, the price of renting a space is so prohibitive, I think, for a lot of teachers. So that definitely plays into it too. Well, thank you for sharing. I am curious, what advice would you give to a teacher who is thinking about maybe adding another teacher to their team? Maybe they have a wait list and they're thinking of adding another teacher or two. Do you have some advice, maybe thinking back to when you were in that position?
So I would say first and foremost, it's really important to keep in mind that running a multi-teacher studio is a completely different job than teaching solo. So when I first started out, I viewed it as like the next step or as an add-on, and it's not. It's a completely different animal, which is fine and great, but you just have to know going in, okay, there's different job duties, there are different stressors, different considerations, and you're going to be doing that all in addition to the teaching and all of that you're already doing. So remembering to view that as like, okay, I'm taking on kind of a second job here in running that. And then secondly, I would say just make sure that you talk to a reputable business or employment attorney, really understand the employment laws of the state, county, region, whatever you're in, because that's really, really important when you're setting things up. You want to do it correctly and just understanding all of the laws and regulations, because there are a lot, and we're not attorneys here. We're piano teachers. So it's important to consult with someone who has that knowledge. And then third, I think it's really good to get the advice of a very smart CPA or financial advisor or something, just so you understand like what are the tax implications of having employees, like what is the setup I need as the business. So just kind of like being willing to like bite into those like scarier parts of owning a business that, as a piano teacher, you want to think like, we're just teaching music and we're just going to have more music going on, when, you do have to kind of like see, okay, how am I laying the foundation? Am I doing this correctly? Is it wise? Does it work? So not to deter anybody from doing it, but just know what you're getting into in a way.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice. I think a lot of us think, oh, I'll just Google it. I'll just find information on the internet. And I think there's really value to going to someone who knows, to an attorney or CPA who knows the ins and outs. I know out here in California, there's all sorts of laws that we have to be aware of, right?
Exactly.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, we could do a whole episode, and maybe that's one for the future, about how you run your multi-teacher studio. But today I want to talk about your Duet camp. So I saw on Instagram this summer that you were running this Duet camp program. And I was like, that sounds so interesting. I want to learn more. So tell us what it was and what it was all about.
So basically, my husband and I had been talking about like different ideas for things to do in the studio. So he's like my right hand man in terms of like ideas, like creative thinker. He's also a musician. He plays the saxophone, but his full-time job is marketing, which is very convenient when you own a business, right? So we're always like brainstorming and thinking like, what new offerings could we have? Like, what kind of things can we like be creating together? And so we had thrown around this idea of a group class. And I didn't want to do a preschool class necessarily because my kids are kind of at that age. So I'm in that like 24/7. So I was like, what can I do? Like, what kind of group class can I do? And so I started to think about my students personally and all the students, with the teachers. And I started to think, like when we're all doing our little solo thing and we all work remotely, right? So we're in our homes and the students are in their homes, like there needs to be more connection. So we're obviously like in contact with each other, but the students don't necessarily always see each other unless we have recitals or just different events. So I thought, maybe creating like a collaborative, like duet class would be a great way to bring everybody together and kind of build some skills that you might not have the opportunity to do in a solo lesson. So all of my students are really well trained, like in their sight reading and their technique, repertoire. Then I thought, like, wait a second, like if you want to work in piano, usually you're going to work like as an accompanist, you're going to work as a collaborative pianist, chamber music. But then that's really hard to offer to students in private lessons. So I'm like, well, what am I doing here? I need to give them this opportunity to know how to like breathe, to signal that they're going to start together. Or if someone makes a mistake, you have to keep going. You can't like stop and expect the other person to adjust to you. So all these little skills were things that I realized were lacking in my students just because of the opportunity. So I thought, okay, a duet camp would be great. So that was kind of how the idea was born. And I wanted to offer it to the whole studio. It mainly ended up being a lot of my students. And then there were a couple that were with the other teachers just because of the time I picked. I think if I had to do it again, I would pick like a 4 p.m. time because I didn't realize how many students are in summer camps in the summer. It just wasn't something I did growing up. And so it wasn't on my radar for this year. So I did a 2:45 time, which worked great for a lot of my students. But then I think if I did like a later time next time, it would open it up even in the summertime.
I love this idea. And I love how you're talking about the skills because, as you know, collaborative piano is kind of my thing. And yeah. And so you're absolutely right. There's different skills that it takes to play with another person. Like, and you'll see different skills develop, like the rhythm part of it, the listening part. I would love for you to tell me a little more about how you set this up. So was this a once a week camp?
So it was once a week, and I decided to do just 4 weeks to try it out. So I was like, okay, if it's a total flop, it's just 4 weeks. The kids won't have to suffer. I've done different group classes in the past. Like I did a music history class. Oh, I feel so sorry for those kids. That was such a boring class. I did it when I was like 21. I was in graduate school. I was like so into it. And my students were so sweet and listened. They did all their assignments, but I just look back and cringe like, oh, it was not the right summertime class. And then I've also done a piano pedagogy class. So when I was looking for a new apprentice teacher to train, I had like a bunch of really qualified older students. And so I thought, okay, I'll teach this piano pedagogy class and see who does the best and who really wants to do it and kind of give them this little apprenticeship spot in my studio for teaching. So that was fun. But then the duets, this was like the first year I'd done it. So I wanted to do something that wasn't like geared toward the business at all. It was just purely for the students. So for this one, I did a 45-minute class and it spanned 4 weeks. So at the beginning of the class, we played like an icebreaker game. So I love Wendy Stevens with Compose and Create. She has just a lot of really interesting resources. So I purchased this or that, and the students liked it. And we would kind of launch off into little conversations about however they answered it. Then I handed out the duet that we were working on that day. And I worked with each student individually. So sort of like sight reading practice in front of the class. It was great. So some students are stronger sight readers than others, but I felt all of them got better through having to do this every week. And then I would coach them together. And then I would do musical chairs. So I would rotate the team. So I would kind of switch it up, or sometimes I would make myself be a team member to kind of help certain students. And then there were a couple of classes where we had students play repertoire for upcoming Royal Conservatory exams, or I had one student play at the MTAC convention. So I used a little bit of the class as like a performance workshop when we had the time. So it was a hop-in class. Like we really did a lot of stuff. Oh, and then stinky socks at the end. I don't know if you've ever played that one. That's a Wendy.
I have not.
It's like a variation on hot potato. So you pick like a stinky looking sock, but it's obviously clean. I clarified with them. I was like, this has been through the wash. I promise, just recently. And they pass around the sock while you're playing music, and then you pause the music. And if you're stuck with the sock, you have to pick the card. It was kind of like musical charades. So it was very funny. Like one of them was sing happy birthday in a falsetto voice. And so like the kids were just being silly, doing these little charades things. So it was a fun way to end the class.
That's a really fun one. I like that.
Top Music Pro enables you to be a pro in your own studio because you don't have to reinvent the wheel and you don't have to make up all the answers yourself. You have support.
I think of Top Music as the pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. This site is the whole pot of gold, and there's gold pieces in there that I didn't even know existed.
I am actually teaching a full studio. They're coming online from miles away. So I am certainly thriving.
So what Tim has done is build a global community of piano teachers who are interested, who are engaged. And when you become part of this community, you feel empowered.
My life is different now because I'm not just in an isolated little studio. I have learnt that there are other people out there going through very similar learning curves and sharing these ideas.
I've really gained a lot of skill sets where my teaching is far more creative, far more innovative. I have resources so that I can add to it things that I didn't know.
My life and my business are different now because I have the three things that I really wanted: less stress, more money, and more time.
It's going to be fun. Like, I got excited about being a piano teacher. It's revolutionized everything that I do.
I think I've become a more thoughtful teacher, a more organized teacher. The quality of my teaching has deepened.
I feel like I can do this. I feel a sense of hope. I love the creativity it fosters and the openness to thinking outside the box, and it's energizing.
Joining Top Music really solidified that. Like, no, this is your career, and you can make a career out of this. That has really helped me be proud of what I do.
It's made such a tremendous impact on the way I think about teaching. It keeps your mind open when you have so many ideas.
My best win from being on Top Music Pro is just having a lot more peace of mind as a teacher and as a business owner. It just gives me that less amount of hours that I have to do with research and everything.
It's a really good place to spend a few pounds, a few bucks a month. What you get from it far outweighs what you have to pay into it.
My biggest win with Top Music Pro was increased student retention and increased income. I have a lot more confidence in how I'm teaching, and I have the resources that I need when I do have questions.
I probably went from about 35 students to maybe like 65. I ended up doing 3 classes and I had a waiting list.
If I hadn't signed up with Top Music Pro, I probably wouldn't have realized that teaching piano is a real job and you can build your whole career around it.
So how many kids did you have in the camp?
We had up to 8. So I think there were some weeks where people were on vacation. So there were some weeks where we only had 2 to 4 students. And then there were some weeks where we had the full 8. So those weeks were like very busy because it was a lot of students to attend to. I thought 45 minutes was going to be like enough. And for 8 students, it was very like down to the minute, like getting through every task, you know.
So this was an add-on class, is that right? In addition to their normal?
So the students had to be enrolled in private lessons in order to sign up for the class. So I wanted to make sure that this wasn't like someone who had taken lessons a year ago and then didn't have like that constant skill of playing the piano. So it was an add-on. And I also felt like that was an easier thing to take on so that I would just email like our student base. So I didn't have to like come up with, advertisement or like, kind of email a cold audience. And it also is in my home. So I'm just really careful about, allowing different people more. So making sure like I knew the students, like, cause I know all the students in our studio. So it was an add-on and I felt like it was just something that the students needed in terms of their skill set and just adding that value, having that connection for the students. Cause now they're so excited, like, when they see a certain student's name in a program or they see them on a sign-up list, because we just did like a community outreach recital at a retirement home. So some of the kids were from the class. And so they were like, oh, I remember you. Like, what are you learning now? You did a great job on this. There's just more camaraderie and more connection, which is what I was really feeling like we needed to foster a little bit more of.
Yeah, I love that so much. I'd love to hear a little more about the repertoire. So did you say that you just gave them the music at the beginning of the class? They didn't have it ahead of time to practice?
Right. So I decided that would be better, especially since it's summer. I didn't want to put too much of an onus on the parents to make sure they had prepared it or practiced it. So I went on Wendy Stevens' site. I was like, I'm going to start here because I just love her music. It's studio licensed. So when you purchase it, you can give it to any students that you personally teach. So it's all kosher under the copyright laws and everything. And so I was looking up duets, and lo and behold, Diane Heidi, one of the teachers who works for her, had chicken duets. And I have a really quirky sense of humor. And I was like, this is too good to pass up. I have to teach these chicken duets. So there are 3, and they're technically Halloween pieces, but I was like, who cares? These are amazing. So the first one is Buck Buck Buccaneers, and they're like pirate chickens. And then the second one was Poultry Pranks. And then the third one was Chicken Bone Dance. So it was just very funny. And all of my students understand that I have this quirky sense of humor. And so they thought it was hilarious. And then I gave all of them a little chicken figurine at the end of the class to remember our chicken duets. And they will still play them at home. I have 2 kids that were in the class who are brother, sister. And so they created their own duet team at home and came back and said, look, we got it to quarter note equals 210. I was like, well, that's way above, but great. So it inspired them to enjoy it at home too.
Okay. So you had 3 chicken duets, and was it the same songs each week that they did? Or did they do new songs each week?
We did, my goal was a new song each week. The last one, Chicken Bone Dance, was harder. So that one took 2 weeks. So I just decided, okay, I'm going to have 3 and I want to get through these 3, but if we don't, that's okay. So the first one, Buck Buck Buccaneer, they got through in that one class. So I would have them review it at the next class and make sure and pass it. And then if they did pass it, then we would start the next one. So it ended up being basically 1 duet per week, except for the last one. What's really cool about her duets is that sometimes they're different levels. So the secondo might be more difficult than the primo. So I was able to kind of shuffle around the duet teams. So one time we did, girls and boys, and then we mixed it up, and then we did siblings, and then we did, okay, I'm going to sub in as the teacher on different ones. So it was good that they didn't have to necessarily be paired at the exact same level. It was a little bit more flexible, and I intentionally chose duets that weren't right at each student's level so that they could sight read it comfortably and just get right into it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the levels. So in the class, were they all kind of a similar level, or was there a little bit of variety?
They were a similar level. Most of them were junior high and high school. So they were similar age. In terms of Royal Conservatory, because most of them do Royal Conservatory, one was level 2, one was level 4, and the other is level 6 in terms of Royal Conservatory. So they are kind of spread out, but it still worked.
So this wasn't little kids. It was a little bit older.
Exactly. And it just turned out to be that way when the signups came in. So I was like, I'm going to wait and see. And I did cap it. Like I said, you had to be, I think, 7 or 8 to be in the class. My daughter did tag along because she loves everything having to do with the piano studio. So she observed for a lot of the duets and she played the games with us. And she is taking lessons, but I was like, let's wait. You and I can do a duet later. But the chicken ones were just a little bit too advanced for anyone younger than 8, I would say.
Tell me about the results that you saw. I mean, you've spoken a little bit about it, but were there specific skills that you look back and you're like, wow, they really came a ways in certain areas?
I think 2 students in particular, I really wanted them to work on their rhythm. So I think that their rhythm really improved. So having to play with someone else. And then also that skill of not stopping and fixing it. So some of them will do that even in a solo performance. And that is something which, as a collaborative pianist, you cannot do, right? You have to keep going. No one stops for you and you have to keep going. So that was one thing that I really noticed improved in 2 particular students. I also felt like it kind of sparked more inspiration in all of the students. So they seemed more excited about different performing opportunities we have this year and just more interested in practicing piano, because sometimes in the summertime, certain students are really diligent and other students struggle when they don't have that structure of school. So I feel like it really like sparked motivation in a season where there can be a lack of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes. Do you think you'll do the Duet camps again in the future?
They're begging me to do it. So I think I probably will. I think I'll do it in the summer because I also am homeschooling our daughter. So I feel like, okay, I can't do too many things during the school year. So I think that probably like in the summer, I'll do another.
Yeah. And I would guess that summer is probably better for students. I would think it would be a nightmare to find a time that would work.
I think it's already hard in the school year. This year was an unusual year because most of my students wanted earlier afternoon times, which is perfect. Whereas last year I had a lot of students who were just entering junior high. So they had to have those like later afternoon times. And, you can't give Wednesday at 4 to everybody. So I think, the scheduling's been okay so far this year, but adding in a class would be, that would be very ambitious, I think.
Right. And if you do find like that ideal time, like Wednesday at 4, you kind of want that for private lessons. You don't.
Private lessons, exactly.
Yeah, I get it. I'm in the midst of the fall schedule right now. And
when does your fall schedule start?
We're starting lessons on Monday. So we're recording this the end of August. So we start lessons, August 26th. So I have to go back to work this afternoon and finish the fall schedule.
Scheduling is the hardest part, honestly. But once that's done, it's so much better.
Yeah. Maybe we should do a whole episode on scheduling.
Oh, yes. The tips and tricks of the trade, right?
Yes. Are there other ways that you've thought about or that you do in your studio to encourage collaboration between your students?
Well, recently we've been doing more community outreach recitals. So that's something I did a lot before kids, but then I was so busy in the baby phase and everything. And then COVID hit. And so there were a lot of just concerns I had. I didn't want to necessarily bring in a huge group of kids and get anywhere. So recently we've been doing that because I just felt like, we need to share our music. It's not enough that you or I are blessed by this or your family. I really feel like we need to go out in the community and just really share this beautiful gift that we have. And then thinking of the elderly. So some of the people in the retirement homes, maybe they can't go out or maybe, they don't necessarily have friends or family visiting that often. And so I went back to this one retirement home I had recitals at about 11 years ago when I was in graduate school. And I asked, I was like, do you guys still have that piano there? Do you have interest? And they were so happy, so thrilled. So I was like, okay, we'll do a tested recital. So I'm just going to bring my students. It's not going to be any of the other ones. Just see how the environment is there. And they were packed. They had so many elderly there and the students just loved it. And what's great about that audience is that they'll compliment the students very loudly, thinking they're whispering. So they'll be saying, excellent, great job. So it's so encouraging for the students. And so they all walked away from that going can we do it again? And so we're planning another smaller, not a studio wide thing, but a, little recital for there at the end of October. So that's been nice having more group events that are smaller. Because at the big studio recitals, it's amazing, but there's so many people and I'm coordinating so many things that there isn't always a chance for me to connect with everyone I want to. So the smaller events, I think, are something I'm exploring in addition to the big studio wide ones, just to create more chance for the students to connect, for me to connect with them. I think it's just good to have those strong relationships in the studio.
Absolutely. It's funny when you were talking about the retirement homes, it reminded me of when I was in grad school. The grad school there would sometimes ask a few of us from the school to go to this retirement home to put on a little concert for them. And I would always volunteer because when you're in grad school, sometimes you get so focused on the mistakes I'm making, and you're always getting feedback about all the things you're doing wrong. And when I would go to that retirement home, they were so encouraging and they just loved it. They didn't care if I made a mistake. They didn't care if I, left out a page. They just loved it. And it was so encouraging for me. I think it did more for me as a performer than maybe even for them. But
Yeah, it's like a blessing to you as the performer to be that well received.
Yes. So I can see with kids that would be really a good motivation.
Yes, definitely.
Is there anything in particular that you're looking forward to in the coming school year?
I'm really excited about, I know we already talked about this, but the community outreach recitals, those are just like really hitting my heart in a good way this year, where it just feels right. It feels so good, like a good time of my life and a good time in my students' lives to be doing these extra things that are so fulfilling and enriching. I'm also really excited. We're doing a holiday recital for the studio-wide one in December. We don't do that every year. I try to switch the theme. So sometimes it's like Halloween, fall. Sometimes it's holiday. So you don't have to learn Jingle Bells every single year. So I'm really excited about the holiday one because that'll be just a special event. My students have been begging for that for a couple of years. I think we did Halloween 2 years in a row. So I'm really excited about that. And then it's been fun having my daughter take lessons too. So she's been doing all the recitals and she's like really progressing. So that's been really fun to kind of combine motherhood with my work, which is great.
Yeah, it's so amazing when you see your own kid playing, even if it's Twinkle, Twinkle, it doesn't matter. It's like a new level of excitement.
When it's weird to be the teacher and the mother. So I have like a different level of like nervousness at recitals where I feel very comfortable as the teacher because I've been doing that for so long. But then to suddenly be the teacher and the mother is a little different.
So I have to ask you one more off-topic question, because on Instagram, you also post pictures of the food you make for your family, and it looks like your family eats really well. And I know that that's a struggle for piano teachers because they're working late into the evenings a lot of times. Do you have any tips or advice for piano teachers when it comes to feeding their families?
Yes. Okay. So first get a slow cooker because that is a lifesaver. So you can just dump it in the morning and it cooks itself and then you finish teaching and you can eat. Or if you have to continue teaching through dinner, your family can help themselves. I like to do everything before. So my family and I get very hangry and my piano is right near, like we have a very open kind of floor plan downstairs. And so people can't really be eating dinner while I'm teaching because it's not that far away. So I have to basically have dinner ready and everything the instant I finish teaching. So I do a lot of slow cooker. I do a lot of like meal prep in the morning, not like meal prep for the whole week. I really admire people who do that, but just I cannot. But just I have everything ready to go. Like if it's a pan dinner that I just stick in the oven during a lesson. So that's really helpful just to not have that stress of having to cook or like figure out what are we eating when I finish teaching.
That's really good advice. I like that idea of meal prepping in the morning when you have that little bit extra time and then just pop it in the oven before your last lesson or something.
I'm obsessed with food. I love food. I'm always thinking about what am I going to eat next? What's next on the meal plan? My students are funny because they'll be like, oh, what are you making today? I smell it when I'm teaching.
Oh, that's funny. I want to take lessons at your house.
One of my students told me, she's like, one of these days, I'm just going to stay for dinner. Okay. Oh, it's so funny.
That's funny. So if listeners want to find out more, if they want to see the beautiful food that you're prepping for your family or learn more about your studio, where can they find you?
So my Instagram is KW Music Studios. And then I also have a Facebook page, KW Music Studios Piano Lessons, and a YouTube channel. And then our website is www.kwmusicstudios.com.
Well, thank you so much, Kirsten, for being here and giving your time to share with us. I love the idea of the Duet Camp, and I think a lot of teachers are going to resonate with that as well. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Rachel.
That's the end of the show for this week. I hope you enjoyed getting to know Kirsten and hearing about how she is introducing collaboration to her students. Personally, I found it so inspiring. I would love to hear from you about how you have included collaboration in your studio. You can find me inside of the Top Music Pro membership or on Instagram at Rachel Ehring. I'm Rachel Ehring, and you've been listening to the Top Music Piano Podcast. I will see you back here next week.
How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages both now and into the future? I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today.